right. Hello, and welcome to 8 Note. I am Sam Irvin here in Irvin Music Studio in Asheville, North Carolina. This weekly Wednesday live stream called 8 Note, 8 parentheses PM note, still no sign, no bright neon sign with a smoke machine around it to let you know about the parentheses PM. Without me saying it, this live stream is a way for me to carve out time in my life to experiment and play creative music, just for fun rather than for work, and to build more community around my studio and meet other Asheville musicians, catch up with old friends, or talk to acquaintances that I've just made. Like today, I've got 2 guests on that I've just met, but they came highly recommended. We've got the bass player and the keyboard player from Dr. Bacon, whose drummer Ben New was on a couple episodes back. That was a fun jam, and I'm sure this one will be too. The format of this show, there are not a whole lot of rules. There's just an hour of chat up front and an hour of jam. That's funny. I'm working out these intros every week. I think about what I'm going to say, throughout the whole week. I started by just talking about the weather and the date. Today is the 16th of November, 2022, and it's been cold and rainy. So I've checked those boxes. I also want to talk a little bit about my small company, Irvin Music Studio, that offers private lessons in guitar and trumpet and a few other instruments. I teach a ukulele student and a couple of drum set students. Love to teach production and synths and composition coaching and stuff like that. Have a few of those clients as well. The season's sort of wrapping up right now for weddings and corporate events, but I play a lot of classical guitar or string combos with violin and sometimes cello for a trio for those. Sometimes I also offer a jazz ensemble with me playing guitar and looping it and playing the trumpet, often backed up with bass and drums. So private lessons over here. Event entertainment is sort of the secondary department, and I also do some recording and sound engineering stuff, and this live stream also serves as a way for me to practice those skills doing this broadcast. Hopefully you can hear me right now and see me. I use OBS to stream this, and have had to get some expansion in my I/O so I can have more inputs and have more than one guest on at a time. So I'm looking forward to, I'll probably get a round table set up soon, and maybe get whole groups in here. I don't know about Dr. Bacon because you guys have like 6 people in the group, but I'm excited to have a trio jamming tonight. And yeah, that third sort of part of my small company is for my creative projects and my recording projects, collaborating with other people. And this live stream falls into that. So let's see, did I check all the boxes? I try to talk about what I'm doing musically, recently. Last weekend, I had the last couple of gigs of what I'm considering the wedding season, although I've got a couple of Christmas-themed weddings coming up. Which will be fun. I like playing some Christmas music. It's on the jazzier side. Played solo guitar up at Pretty Place. We were in a cloud, so there was no view for that group, unfortunately, and played a Celtic service on Sunday at the Episcopalian Church downtown, Trinity Episcopalian, and that's a nice gig. I played the prelude from the 4th cello suite by Bach that I've been working on. Don't have it quite memorized yet, but it was nice to have an audience to play that in progress piece for. That's the arrangement by Stanley Yates. But now we're going to take a pretty hard left turn from Bach and weddings and get sort of more into the jammy mode. I've got Michael Crawford here and Matt Gornto, the keyboardist and bass players from Dr. Bacon. Come on down. Yeah. I said I was going to introduce you first. All right. Welcome on. Thanks for coming. Do you guys have enough room?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Let's make sure everybody's like on camera here. So I have to stream on Instagram separately because if I stream with the platform that I stream to all these other sites on, it just chops out like a little tiny part of the screen for the Instagram.
Yeah.
So they would see like the microphone. But
You'd think aspect ratios would be, uniform, but Instagram coming in, breaking the mold.
That's right. Yeah.
We need it to be square.
It's hip to be square.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Some Huey Lewis.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Have you guys done any virtual shows? Like, were you guys in the band over COVID and during that whole debacle?
I was.
I was not, but I hosted a live stream, a Bacon live stream at my house during COVID, which was cool. Which was actually not even a Dr. Bacon live stream. We had a bunch of special guests like Brendan from Emma's Lounge came and yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, it was more of a hosted by Dr. Bacon live stream.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, for that one.
That's cool. The band's got a few of those outlets, like the Facebook page. It seems pretty active. We're just talking on.
Yeah. Miles is the head honcho of social media for us. He does a great job with it.
Okay, cool. I don't want to lose the thread, but I do want to double check. It's a tradition of the show to make sure that we're getting audio. Yeah. We are.
It's always a good thing to double check.
Yeah, definitely. I should check it up top with my intro spiel. But luckily it's coming through. We sound good. We look good.
Well,
Michael, you're right up front there. That's good.
When you're the guy and you don't have a guy, you got to check yourself,
That's right.
Yeah.
Before I wreck myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
You guys are number 40 of this project.
Oh, wow.
40
Nice.
weeks in a row. I've missed one. But it's been a learning process the whole time. This initially wasn't here. All of this stuff was crammed into this corner, and I was trying to do everything in front of the Moog wall. But
Well, I gotta say, you got this set up like a perfectly oiled machine.
thanks. Well, it helps you guys got here early and got your gigantic. One of your rigs is much more gigantic than the other one. Keyboard or bass player? Who do you think it is? But I'm glad. Yeah, we had plenty of time to set up. We actually did a sound check today. That's actually the first time that I've had time to do that.
Oh wow.
That's helpful.
Overachievers right here.
That's right. Total pros. Well, you guys are gigging like all the time, right? Do you have a number of how many gigs you've played this year, or even a ballpark?
That's an interesting question.
I think we're on target to hit like 86 to 90 this year. Typically we break 100 in a year, so it's a little bit of a light year for us this year.
Yeah, I somehow ended up with less gigs than last year, even with COVID and all that stuff. So, yeah,
Had
but
some time off. Michael got married this year.
Yes, that took
congrats.
a couple of weeks off. Thank you.
Yeah.
That took a few weeks off of our tour schedule, and then it's just been interesting this year. It seems like all of the birthdays and anniversaries and significant other birthdays and all the things that you kind of really should take off all happen to be on weekends.
They're happening on weekends this year.
And
gotcha.
that always happens over like a 2 or 3 year rotation where you have a couple of years in a row where all the things seem to happen on a weekend, and then they all happen on Monday and Tuesday for a little while. It's like nice.
I hate
we have a few
to
busy
bust
years.
your bubble, viewers, but Michael's not single. Not a single man.
Oh, man.
Haven't been for a long time.
Let me get you up front. So I guess with 6 people in a band, you have to have your availability pretty charted out, like for the whole year. Have you guys done that for 2023 yet? Like,
we don't have the whole year booked out yet. We have generally a
talked last
rough
night.
idea of what we're going to be doing and where we want to be. Some of the bigger things that we want to try to achieve. But we really are looking more like 4 to 7, maybe 8 months out at a time.
Mhm.
So, and of course that all sort of gets compressed as you get closer to the end of the year, and then things slow down a lot between Halloween and St. Patrick's Day. They get gradually slower into New Year's, and then after New Year's until St. Patrick's Day, it's like the doldrums. And that's when you get a lot of like the rest of your year work gets taken care of, all that booking, all that reworking your rigs, going into the studio recording, at least for us. Get as much of the work done when it's, slower, fewer gigs as you can then. And then St. Patrick's Day hit, and it's like off to the races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't wait for the dip this year and get some of that work done. Yeah, what do you have anything big planned for the work that you're going to get done?
Well, we are hoping to take a sort of more producer-esque approach to this next album that we're going to work on, and kind of have more than maybe double the amount of material that an album would need, so that we can be able to choose the material that seems suitable to happen one after the other, or whatever. So we're working on getting stuff ready to record an album. That hopefully, I'm not going to put a date on it, but
Yeah, no exclusive drops here.
hopefully
Yeah.
it
Coming
could
out
be done sometime
next week.
earlier next year, potentially.
Assuming we get our ducks in a row and actually have it all finished. We're
Yeah.
still writing the last couple of songs on it. And we want to have everything completely ready before we go into the studio so we can get it all done in one shot. The past few studio efforts have been piecemeal together over months or longer.
This when you get a free day or
Oof.
weekend or something.
Yeah, someone goes in for 4 hours, tracks 1 or 2 songs, or maybe just one solo section in 4 hours, and we want to really go in intentionally and have it all mapped out and all done in one take. So we only set up the drum kit in the studio one time. All the mics are placed exactly the same, and apply that across the board to everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Capturing a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like a week, a couple of weeks, you think? Is that the timeline? I haven't been a part of a project
Probably
like
so,
that.
yeah.
Probably a couple of weeks. Once it pushes out to like a month, you start to get into that trap of you have too much time to think about what you laid down and not does it sound good and does it suit the job. When you start to think about what you laid down, it's really easy to start rewriting your parts and think, oh, I could have done this better because I now have a better idea of what I want to play, and I'm doing something different live now, so I want to go in and retrack.
If it takes you too long, then
And
you're
that's
like, I don't even play this the same way anymore. Wait, I'm gonna retrack everything, and then everyone retracks everything over and over, and then never,
that's a black hole that you'll
you
never
never finish.
escape.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely. How, when I'm trying to record something here, I start with the drums and then add the bass typically and go up like that. Is that typically how you guys are
absolutely.
working it?
We will record some sources live if we feel like they should be. And traditionally, just the bands that I've been in the past, we've always recorded live. But this being a 6-piece, it's kind of ridiculous to even imagine doing that unless you have a warehouse space to work in, and
With 5 ISO booths.
Yeah.
and then you're making sure at that point that everyone, oh man, we have to start over because the rhythm guitar was slightly out of tune, so now everyone has to redo their part over again, where a little bit less live can be like, let's focus on getting these drums done. Once the drums are done, then we have a skeleton for the rest of the things. So
And correct me if I'm wrong, we're still planning on doing like drums and bass together live with like a scratch guitar and a scratch vocal. that
Yeah.
we'll just
Yeah,
use
yeah.
to make sure we get the structure of the song and a little bit more context while you and Ben are tracking, and then redo those guitar and vocal takes.
Unless I feel like pretty much a perfectionist, so I even if I recorded the bass live, I probably would come back, and if I didn't love the part, re-record with a bunch of different recording techniques, or just having the space to myself to really mic a cab if I want to, or just get it sounding right.
Yeah, Gore actually has a space a lot like yours set up at his house, and that's where we do most of our recording.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna ask if it was in the studio, like if you guys are renting something out, because talk about going for a month or something, that would be astronomical.
Yeah, no, we've done some of that before. We've like through band competitions or just part of a gig deal where the talent buyer also has a studio space, have worked in like nice professional studios, but we find that we're most effective and at home in his living room,
More comfortable, yeah.
which is set up very similar to this, where he's got nice sound treatment and all the mixing equipment and all the mics and stuff that we would need.
Snacks and no time constraints.
There we go. Yeah.
The key. We actually have 2 studios now, which is really cool because Michael has the rehearsal space where we practice most times is also a pretty decent 32 track recording space now as well. So it'll probably be a hybrid of both rooms.
It's a cold, dank basement, but it sounds all right.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, you don't want it to be completely dead. You want a
Yeah.
little bit of that basement flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even depending on the song, if it's kind of an open rock song, you could use the bigger room for the drums for that track, or just having options is fun.
Yeah, definitely. And you said you're recording with Cubase most
Mm-hmm.
of the time. Can I get a little deeper into the nerddom
Absolutely,
of your
yeah.
studio? Like, can we like mics and interfaces? What's your like go-to? I'm only at the level of an RE20, dynamic mic. It's just better than this. I think the next mic I'll buy is probably a nicer omnidirectional condenser mic, just so I can use it for this
Absolutely.
interview style.
I was actually kind of trying to see if that was set on Omni or not. And I definitely have been scoping your mics ever since I got here, for sure. I've not seen those SEs that you have above the drum kit before. They look really cool.
Yeah, not so bad. I'm wondering if they plume out enough to catch, the entirety of my kit, the way Ben New was talking about how he's never seen the mics set up in this direction, the overhead mics.
Yeah.
Often they're set up going into each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I might
Just
have messed up.
having the capsules as close together as possible is the coincidental pair technique. Yeah. So microphones, I don't own an RE20. I would love to own one. Those sort of more expensive dynamic mics are always like, I'm like, oh, should I get one? Seems expensive for a dynamic mic, and I never get one. There's a bunch like that. The SM7B is another one similar.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I know if I had 3 of those right now, that's like the perfect
oh yeah,
podcasting mic.
Y'all keep going. I'm gonna bring something into this conversation here in a second.
Totally.
so I have a long time ago I bought a Focusrite Sapphire 40 8-channel interface. It's really old now. It's a Firewire interface.
So if you're in the market for everyone having their own mic, and like the SM7B is pretty expensive, higher end mic, and you're wanting to go for more of the classic 70s TV show, late night news anchor,
We're all holding them.
the this is the Electro Voice 635, I think, maybe 365. I'm pretty sure it's 635, but it's a omnidirectional mic and gives you that nice, smooth, warm 70s radio voice.
Okay. Perfect.
Tone. It's great for this kind of a setup where You would see it a lot on like the Late Night with David Letterman shows, the mic that was sitting on the desk. So yeah, and unfortunately it's like a really thin, narrow mic, so I've got it all taped up.
So
Which
it's
really
a normal plug.
hides the nice classic vibe that it has. And they still make them, and they're like $100, like $120.
Nice hot
And
tip.
they sound really warm, if that's what you're going for.
Might
Michael
test that
and I-
out before you leave.
Michael and I are for sure the microphone nerds of the band. But yeah, so I got the 8-channel interface that I've added an Octapre to, which is a like ADAT extension that adds another 8 channels, and that is what I use pretty much for everything in my studio. Now, as far as Michael's, as a band, we just got an M32 and a DL32. Is that right?
Yeah, so we got the M32C, which is the 1-unit rack space Midas brain that has all the A to D. Actually, that doesn't even have the A to D conversion. That just has like the user interface and the software side of things. It's really just the brain. And then the DL32 is the Midas 32 channel stage box that has the 32 in, 16 outs. The A to D conversion and preamps are built into that. And it's really well suited for live applications. So you can have the stage box on stage and then the brain attached via Ethernet cable 50, 100, 200 feet away, say at front of house. But it works really well in the studio too.
Yeah, what we were noticing
Yeah.
is that we made a really big preamp upgrade with that, where the first night that we used it, I record all the rehearsals just to like have some, it's like game film almost, see where we need improvement. And the very first time we used that new rig, we noticed a substantial improvement in sound quality, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I know. I'm working with the Focusrites too, and I think probably
I love their
mine.
stuff.
Yeah, it's good. It's reliable and fundamental, but definitely doesn't have like a nicer end preamp. It's not adding anything nice to the sound.
Focusrite preamps are, I would consider them like, to me they're like the standard, and then things can be worse or better, but they're right there enough to get the job done, and can work with them and always get something nice out of them.
So that kind of gets into a conceptual question of, do you want a preamp or an A to D converter to add to the sound, or do you want it to just be as like transparent as possible? And I kind of wrestle with that because I'm a sucker for things that just sound good and pleasing, but then like intellectually I think about what do I really want, something that isn't lying to me or adding to the sound in any way. Like if I'm picking out headphones to mix with or in-ear monitors, I'm telling myself I want to buy the flattest, most even response possible, so I have a real true representation. But then I find myself adding EQ to them afterwards. And I'm like, wait a second.
I'm pretty again. Yeah.
Well, are you adding EQ just to the monitoring situation or to the recording that you're working
My
on?
monitoring
Okay.
for live at least, the monitoring situation. And then when I do sound design sessions, I have to remember, wait, no, I've boosted the low end, I've cut out some of the mids, I've tamed the harshness in the highs while giving some presence. I need to turn all that off so I actually know what I'm doing.
Yeah, definitely. I got those focals to mix with, which have been really nice, but they're so the bass is so present, that then I'll print the track and listen to it. Of course, we've all been there on the cell phone or the laptop. Like, oh, this song doesn't sound like anything anymore.
So it seemed like anemic because when you were mixing, there was so much bass that you didn't think you needed to add more or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good to know those things about monitors and headphones, because once you know that, and it's sort of like not tricking you anymore, and then you can sort of come up with a more realistic, flatter EQ, just with the knowledge of, okay, so these guys are really bassy, but I'm not gonna let that fool me this time, type of thing.
Yeah, I I definitely agree. I think it's difficult from a composition standpoint sometimes too, because I think what I'm hearing is the bass that's coming out at like 40 dB, that can that's definitely not going to show up on a cell phone or whatever. The the octave of that is pushing like that 80 100 range where I want the kick drum to live, so I'm probably going to miss that in the cell phone speaker or whatever too. And the octave above that's probably in the 160 to 200 range, which is nice. But now that's where the first overtone of the kick drum's coming in. Everything starts to like group up and get uglier and uglier the more I move into
Well,
what is going to show up on the cell phone, on
so I'm
lesser speakers.
constantly catching myself like studying on YouTube, uh, like nerdy, deeper gear stuff like this. And one of the channels that I've really enjoyed recently is the Seed to Stage series of Ableton tutorials. It's the guitar player from Papadosio, and
Okay,
he's
cool.
built this device in Ableton Live that he has actually provided for free. That's like a sub bass, and he goes through the whole development of it in this video where he talks about adding in EQ and compression and some harmonics and adding in odd and even series harmonics so that you can sculpt in those overtones to allow you to really hear the bass without it being just a lot of volume in that 80 hertz and below range, and then sculpt around your kick drum and around the low end of your keys and avoid the like muddy sections, and using stuff that adds to the tone, but then sculpting around it so that it doesn't like change the tone.
Yeah.
And something I'm trying to start to build into my rigs so that we fit together better on stage and in the studio.
I was about to ask, yeah, you're using Ableton Live in your setup, and so are you running everything through like a not everything of the whole band, but your setup through like a like a master bus EQ at the end of the process?
Yeah, so
Or you
I
can
have
take me through the whole thing.
yeah, I have a pretty overly complicated and redundant rig. All of my inputs have their own input channel in Ableton, and all of them have input compression and EQ and gating, and then individual effects on each of those channels. And then those are all sort of matrixed or bussed together into one output channel that then runs through a series of more processing within Ableton. Then all of that is sent out. I have a Line 6 Helix that sort of offloads a lot of the more complex DSP signal processing. So the reverbs and delays and that kind of stuff that would take up a little bit more processing power or add more latency to my rig.
While also giving you foot control.
While
over
also
those
giving me a
things.
lot of
Yeah.
foot control.
Yeah.
And then all of that goes back into Ableton as a stereo channel for more EQ, compression, noise gating, that kind of stuff. And then that sends separately to my ears. So I have my own send to my ears that I have full control over, and then a separate send out to the mains, out to front of house, or if I'm in the studio, out to the interface.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So you've got I'm gonna parrot it back. Let's see if I can try. So you've got each individual input going to multiple buses, each with a various effect, because that's how Ableton works, right? Each effect is basically its own bus. Is
You-
that
So you can have, it's more like each track, you can add effects to that track, both a input track and a return track. So you can, on each of those inputs, add, say, an EQ, a compressor, if you wanted like a delay or a reverb or something, you can add that to that track at the track level if you wanted it to be different for, say, a vocal mic versus a harmonica mic versus synthesizer. You could have different ones for each, or you could have all of those tracks grouped together in a matrix or a bus and add effects that would go to each of those in that group. Then you also have return tracks, so you can set the amount that each of those input tracks are sending to that return and have effects on that. So if I wanted, let's say I want to have a master reverb that affects everything that goes through my rig so that everything sits in a space, I can have different amounts of send from harmonica versus vocal versus the synthesizer going to that reverb effects return track.
Okay. Maybe that's the sort of bus functionality that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That return track is.
The return track is more of a bus idea, but you have the ability to do it on the input too.
I see what you're saying though. There's always two options. You could add an effect to a track, or you could make an effect track that some of the track goes to, or the very opposite of that. But also, I think Michael, you just decided, man, they made these harmonicas like really simple. We got to figure out a way to make this more complicated.
Right.
I need to justify taking an even cut of our pay every show. Because harmonica's like bowling with bumpers. You can't really make a mistake. It's set scale, so it's like really comes down to taste and timing.
This
And
is
if
a
you make a
step
wrong
up.
note, it's still in the scale, so you didn't make a wrong note.
I'm pretty sure on the very first episode of this live stream, Andy John, a fellow teacher with me at Asheville Music School, played the chromatic harmonica
Oh,
while I
nice.
played guitar.
Yeah, see,
You
that's
can step it
impressive.
up.
That's impressive. That's actual technical skill.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to explain that either. Or your rig anymore, parroting it back to you.
So the chromatic ones have like the spring-loaded button on the side. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Switches between the half steps.
So I've got a real simple explanation for the two different kinds of harmonicas. There's diatonic and chromatic. Diatonic is like walking up to a piano and all of the wrong notes are taken out. You have just those notes, and if you just peck at the keys and
Like
you have,
just the white notes.
yeah, just the white notes or just the black notes, you're not going to play a bum note. They're all going to be in the scale. A chromatic harmonica is like you walk up to it and it's all of the white notes, and then you press a button on the side and it's all the black notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. But it seemed like even more than that. It's not like it just takes all the notes up a half step when you press the button.
It's a little more
It's,
complicated than that, yeah.
Pattern, right? Or I could be mistaken about that.
There's a bit more complication to it, but we don't need to go into
But we're not
that.
playing chromatic harmonica tonight. So you've got effects on the inputs and these sort of bus or returns,
Mhm.
and all of those are coming out into your effects pedal. The Helix is really awesome. I'm trying to think. I had a couple of guests bring some Helixes on already. Just really top-notch stuff. Those are very
Line
pro,
6
top of the line.
Line 6 got a bad rap for a while, as you know, just being the intro guitar rig that has a bunch of effects, none of them sounding that great. They have completely superseded that reputation and don't deserve it anymore based on like the HD 500 series and the Helix. It is a real awesome professional piece of gear that sounds great, and it can achieve just about any sound pretty convincingly.
Yeah.
That being said, I had a Line 6 Spider 2 in college modeling amp that I just hated, and I still have a bad taste in my mouth because of how bad that thing sounded.
Yeah, that older Line 6 stuff is so laughable, a lot of it.
Hey, give it 10 years, maybe 20 years. Now you're going to be like,
It has
man, I
been.
wish I still have that. No, like another. And then it'll be like vintage 80s gear. You want that cheesy, cheap sound back.
True.
Yeah, Could be. That could be the sound.
Like the Casio tone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's back in style now, man.
it's
As
true.
long as you say the word Casio enough in the song. Like, you know what I
You're
mean?
talking about that song about jungle?
I was talking about the Gorillas and Soul Coughing.
Oh,
They
okay,
both
yeah.
had songs. Casio tone.
Mhm.
That's cool. What about your okay, so but then you said that everything's going into the pedals back into Ableton, so you've got a mix and are you always listening to the same mix that you're sending out to say me, like that we're gonna be listening to?
It's not exactly the same mix. There's a slight EQ and compression difference, but it's like nearly the same. That's mostly so that if I am sending something that has like a lot of bass in it, I might clean up that bass for a live situation, whereas I want it to be that full deep into the rumble frequency range in my in-ears, and also to try to notch around what I hear to what I'm receiving from Gore's bass range, whereas I am placing the frequency assigning role in the live situation for front of house to the front of house engineer, because they can hear how those frequencies interact with the space better than I can. So I send typically a cleaner, less EQ'd signal to front of house, and that's generally what I do when I show up at a venue. Is like, I'm sending you what I want you to hear in perfect situation, and I'm trusting that you're going to EQ me for the room.
Yeah. Yeah, just trust the front of house engineer.
Try
Hopefully
to.
they can do it. Yeah.
To answer your question about microphones earlier,
I would
yes,
just say
that
thank you. I really am glad. I was holding on to the thread, I swear. And I want to hear about your pedal board over here as well.
I would
And your
endorse
studio at large.
Shure, Sennheiser, and SE would be my favorite microphone brands at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
SE's great company that seems relatively new, but the price point of the things that they're putting out is wild right now. So most of my new mics have been SE mics, and I think as a band too, we are thinking about that. All of their cool live vocal mics and stuff now, and yeah. So as far as my bass rig, it's so I'm a guitarist, so I got used to having a
Wait,
Marshall
but are you
amp
playing bass in Dr. Bacon?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't want to. I wanted to make sure I didn't misintroduce you.
Yeah, they asked me if I wanted to audition on bass, and having a studio, I had a bass rig and I owned a bass. I think I bought maybe a year prior to that just to have one. They asked me if I wanted to audition, and I was like, that's really strange, but yeah, we can try this out. And I think everybody in the entire band would attest to the fact that I probably sound like a guitarist playing a bass for at least the first 6 months of that. And
Yeah.
and then now I'm like, figuring it out that bass is, at least right now, my favorite instrument to play. So much fun, so much more fundamental and just groovy. I don't think I could really do much moving on a stage if I was playing guitar. I'd be worried about these crazy melodic concepts, and it's probably standing very still and playing a lot at any given time if I played guitar. But on a bass, it's just like, what's the kick drum doing, and how should I be helping this song? And then once you figure that out, you can kind of just like jump around and have a good time. I love it. So my bass rig is very opposite from my guitar rig. The guitar rig would be this complex, maybe not as complex as Michael just described, but not using a computer, but very, very many effects looping in and out of one another and things like that, where the bass, I kind of enjoy dry sounds for bass, and so I don't have anything wet at all on my pedal board except maybe an auto wah, if you even consider it to be. It can be. Um, just try to have it simple, have just the clean signal run through the amp, just have an amp that's loud enough, and that's it. Um,
Yeah, this simplify. Yeah.
and I'll take some EQ out of like vocal mid range out of my bass tone. It seems helpful in the band situation, in the live situation.
So you've
Rather
got
than
an
it's-
EQ on your board?
Yeah, yeah. And as far as the amp, I always leave the EQs untouched, just all neutral, and then I just have a couple bends on the pedal that I'll just pull down somewhere between probably 400, 800 hertz.
Mhm.
So
And that's
allowing,
at the beginning of your chain?
it's actually at the very end.
I was wondering,
That's
yeah,
a
after the octaver, I guess
it's
you'd
yeah,
want that.
it's a question of much debate where to put pedals on a bass pedal board, but I just decided no, I want at the end of the whole thing to pull out some mid range, so that no matter what I turn on, it still has that nice cut, which I could turn off just by pushing the pedal. If it was an instrumental section or something where that wasn't as necessary.
Hmm. Well, I mean, you guys were already, I only heard you for a few seconds, but you guys were fitting together really nicely, even through the somewhat rudimentary setup that I've got in OBS. Like, I would like to get some live sound stuff here so I could get the whole room going through some out of the box like compression and EQ, to just get a nicer live sound. But as of right now, it's just going into OBS because I haven't figured out how to send it through Pro Tools into OBS uh, to get just like a permanent sort of master happening for the room.
Yeah, I guess you could. Like I said, I'm still figuring out the whole live stream thing, and we certainly didn't do it correctly when we did our live stream in 2020, or maybe it was 2019. But yeah, just it seems like maybe you could just have stereo outputs that you could like affect the product and then send it out stereo to the next thing. You wouldn't have any like live stream control over the levels at that point, really, so much as but then you could throw a compressor on the whole thing, at least.
Yeah.
There's also software solutions that we used, not at the live stream that we did over at your place, but when we did some over at my basement, where you can set a software sound card essentially inside the computer as your output, and it's not actually sending out of the computer. And then you set that same software sound card, virtual sound card, as your input in your like if you're going into OBS as the stereo input. And then you have like your Pro Tools, we have full control and all the Pro Tools bells and whistles, and then just the stereo output of that going through this virtual sound card to OBS.
Yeah.
And then you have level control over your stereo.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure as look out, everybody. I'm sure as this continues, I'll find some of those solutions. I've just been nervous about that, the I/O aggregate stuff because of the lag and the latency that that's gonna create. But I guess it doesn't really matter as long as we're listening to, like we are today, we're just listening to our monitors of the inputs rather than what's
Yeah,
coming out of
yeah,
OBS.
So yeah, the nice thing about that is, as far as the performance side, there is no perceptible lag on the software aggregate side, but you just want to make sure that you're under like maybe 20 to 25 milliseconds added latency on the video side, so that when you see the drummer hit the snare, it's not like he hits the snare and then bam.
Oh, I know. I'm not sure what that's looking like right now. I don't know if I've added that latency. Maybe remind me of we're gonna take a small break before our jam.
There's
Take a breath.
there's gotta be a video latency adjustment that you can make as well, so that you're input side of the video it lags behind a little bit. You know, you can add in an extra, you know, just like if you're recording through any like software DAW, you can remove whatever latency that you have. Say it's, you know, 7 milliseconds. Anytime you record, that recording actually, when it like writes the file, writes it 7 milliseconds later.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that there's a capability to do that, and I went for it. I get perfectionist about that sort of thing. I like went for it, and then I was like, no, wait, I'll spend a whole day by myself in the studio, like testing it, and whoever's following me on YouTube, if there happen to be on YouTube, will see like testing videos like throughout the day of my stream.
Does anybody ever come in here for a lesson and see all of the crazy awesome gear that you have and decide like, hey, actually I just want to spend our hour like messing around with all this synth gear and stuff?
I think that
That's what happened
person's
to me.
me sometimes. I'm like, hey, like let's do a synth lesson today, or especially with young guitar, you know, students, I want them to go through like the crazy effects. Because playing an electric guitar, I mean, that's like half of the battle.
Yeah.
But what were you about to say? You were that kid?
Oh, that's how I would be if I showed up here for a lesson and saw these racks of Moog things. I would.
Do you have the entire Mogerfoger line? Is that? I think that's everything.
I do, and they just released them all virtually, so now I've just
you
got
don't want
the
that. You
hardware
want
ones.
this.
Yeah, that's fine.
I want this.
I need a couple of more patch bays so that I can route everything together. They're sort of even those are the Moog produced, or they're not, but they're the Moog branded like rack mounts for the Mogerfogers, but they don't give you a whole lot of room to be plugging everything in, you know. But that's supposed to be half the fun. But I've got them all chained up, and they do go into the patch bay. All of my synths go both into that patch bay and into the mixer above. And so and I've got like a MIDI clock splitter, so they're all sort of integrated into this like master brain kind of thing.
I love it.
It was just a stereo out. What was that?
I love it.
It's great. Yeah, you can mess around. I got it all live. You can start pressing buttons if you want when we're messing around. But I think your rig is much more cohesive, and for gigging, like I have some production clients, you know, when I'm trying to make a sound for them, I'm like, I can do this really awesome thing. I'm gonna, you know, send this. I'm gonna do a snare roll live, and then I'm gonna record that into Pro Tools and then send it out through all of my Mogerfogers, and then tune in like various effects to make that one build, that snare, like an epic moment. And then that person just sits there and watches me do that for like 30 minutes. It takes so long, you know, rather than plugging like a sample of a snare roll in Ableton and then building that chain. That's so much more exciting to see like in the moment, I think. I don't know.
Analog versus digital.
I think that this would be so much more exciting to see happen in the moment, but
maybe, I guess I can't get inside other people's head. I get self-conscious when I'm like, I'm just turning this knob.
yeah, I can see that, but there's something about like the tactileness of physical analog gear, which is funny. Like I have this want for that, and that is so not what I have built for myself.
It's always
the
like,
opposite.
grass is greener, you know.
Yeah. Well, one, I can't afford.
That's true.
Can't
Plugins
afford
are
all
great,
of that.
I just deal with plugins all the time. So then when I see this, I'm like, okay, that's actually what I want to be messing around with.
I simply worked at Moog for 5 years and got a discount for a long time. So it is what I happen to have, and I try to go with that mindset a lot. When I do finally, and I'm looking forward to having more this winter, you know, in that doldrums, is that what you're calling it? Some time to get creative, and I come down here and I'm just like, I don't even, like, what do I start with? The best thing for me right now is I have my matriarch set up right in front of my monitors, and I just have to start with that thing, the thing that's like right in front of me.
Yeah.
You know.
that immediacy is, like, for me, one of the most important things in like a creative process of just having something you can touch and it just makes a noise and it works and it's consistent every time.
Yeah.
Like, I've, outside of the practice space, if we have like just gotten off the road and all of our gear is still packed up in the bus, I have like just a little plastic Casio in my office. It's always plugged in. All I have to do is press a button and it turns on. It's like immediacy. Anytime I need to learn something or just to have a spark, I'm like, I need to play some music and don't want to spend an hour unloading everything and setting it all up. Having something right there.
Yeah.
It's important to have that, just to have something that it's not in a case. It's just sitting there, ready to be used, in tune if it's a stringed instrument. But just my bedroom, I have a bass and a guitar that are always there. Maybe it's not always the same one, but there's always at least one of each, just so that if I walk by and get the notion, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna play this now. Even if I was going to do something else sometimes.
Yeah, that can wait a few, like even for a few minutes. I feel like that can be the seed sometimes too. Like I'm just gonna start playing. I'm just gonna play for 10 seconds or whatever, and then it can sort of grow.
I mean,
An hour later, you finish your laundry.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I was always told that if you're trying to learn an instrument, 15 minutes a day is really all that it takes to actually make progress, noticeable progress, month to month.
Hear that, students who are definitely
15 minutes of practice.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely true. I tried to load all of that up when I was in high school and taking orchestra lessons, and playing in orchestra. I tried to load it all up on like one day and do an hour of practice. And after I joined the band, it was like, got busier, couldn't just load up all in one day, so 15 minutes a day, and it really was so much more effective than trying to load it all up. And so if you're only going to be playing for 15 minutes, you don't want to spend 45 setting up. You want to just press a button, good to go. Like turn the amp on, pick up the guitar,
Let's have it very available.
Tune it.
Yeah.
And it's like immediately available.
Yeah. Or next level up, like your performance, like whole setup or the instruments that you use. Sometimes I get tempted to like, I could sell, a fraction of this and get just one synth that I, could know very well. But then I sort of have to start all over, or I should start Ableton, or but working with like what I already know and what I've spent time on. But then I guess the contrast to that is maybe to bring it back to like the preamp conversation. Like you don't know what you're missing or like what you could be adding to a sound until like you have heard that sound.
Yeah.
Well, also just like seeing what you have, it looks like you've taken the approach that's taken me way too long to learn on my own, of not buying just what you can afford in the moment to satisfy that like new gear itch, but saving up and getting exactly what you're going to need in a few years and giving yourself that room to grow into the equipment that you have and getting something that's nice and worthwhile. That's a lesson that I keep like even somewhat recently having to reteach myself through failing at it and buying or thinking like, all right, I really need to have something that can achieve this purpose. And if I buy it today, then I'm going to get the lower quality, or it's only going to have that one use, rather than saving up and getting something that's higher quality or has multiple uses and will allow me to grow into it over time and not need to replace it.
Go ahead and save and get the nicer thing.
Get the nicer thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It can feel like, oh, this company is just charging more because they can or whatever. But usually there's this very strong correlation as to the more expensive stuff being worth it.
Yeah, like there are certainly exceptions to that, but if you look at the Nord Stage pianos, I went with some other brands first that were cheaper and they lasted me a year or two of touring before they broke. And I was like, well, they do all the exact same things. They get decent reviews. Why am I not getting this out of it? And then I bought the Nord Electro 6, and I've beaten the hell out of that thing on the road, and it's held up fantastically. Now, the exception is that you can find incredibly good gear that is well built and inexpensive, but it's harder to find. You need to sometimes take a risk on something that isn't proven. The Hydrosynth by ASM, relatively new company. They put out a all digital wavetable morphing synth, and are charging like an unreasonably low price for what it can do and the build quality of it. But I didn't know that it was going to be as good as it is until I actually used it and ran it through its paces. So it was a bit of a risk, and I'm not taking my own advice about buying things that I know are going to be good. But sometimes it can pay off if you get something that's relatively new.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like sort of untested. Although I've heard great things about the Hydrosynths. I don't know if you're addicted. I love this YouTube channel, like Loopop.
I'm not familiar.
It's a guy who just really, you just see his hands and the synth on the table, and he just goes through like every capability, sort of in a completist, very organized
Oh
list.
yeah, I'm gonna
It's great.
to look that up later.
Yeah.
That sounds like right up my alley.
I love watching the ones of the synths that I have, and I'm like, oh, it can do, even if you read the manual, he'll be like, oh, you can, some sort of backdoor.
Speaking of,
ideas.
the manual for the Hydrosynth is fantastic. It's the best manual of any gear that I've ever seen. It's like this thick. It covers every possible parameter, and it's full of humor. It's like an enjoyable read. You would think like, oh, it's a thick manual. I don't want to read all this technical jargon. They make it funny. It's like actually sat through and read the whole thing twice because it was so enjoyable.
Nice. That's what we should all do.
And I swear I'm not that much of a nerd.
Well, we're
Okay, maybe
almost at our time, but I'm going to ask you guys both the question that I ask everybody. I feel like it's the one emergent question that seems like useful. And you've already named some stuff, but like what's a problem and a solution that you've run into? Like what's a particular purpose of a piece of gear that you've invested in that you knew you needed? Or like what is a behavioral thing that you had to change about yourself to succeed? Or what's a technical difficulty that had an easy fix that made you feel dumb,
There's so many.
Right.
I think that a problem that I've worked through that I forget about every year, and it just happens again until now. Now I know, so I won't probably struggle with this too much in the future. Is clock syncing.
Yeah.
And just when you're using multiple sets of preamps or whatever, it's like identifying the source that you want to be the clock source and telling everything else that that's the source. And that's really been difficult to very frustrating thing to overcome if you don't know what you're doing.
Did you experience that when you were adding on your Focusrite expansion, the Octo Pre?
Absolutely, yeah.
I just got that like last month, and it drove me crazy for a whole weekend, and it was really dumb.
So one of them, the
solution.
extension clock source is internal. The clock source is not internal for the other piece, because that now is the clock source is the other thing, which is not internal for it. So it's just kind of worded funny, and that's what I struggled with, was just figuring that out. Like the clock source is ADAT. Okay, well I don't have any little tape machines, so I don't know what that, that's the weird thing to call it, but just because it's optical, it's ADAT is the solution.
That's what got me, yeah, because I was changing everything back and forth, and there is that, is it optical or RCA? And I was like, well, optical is not working right now, so let me try RCA, and then I never toggled that back whenever I did line everything up properly. And so, like, I finally read that, like, way down in the comments of a YouTube video,
And I think every live bass player probably ever knows about this, where you kind of run through rigs until you get the right one that starts to actually last a while. I've had cabinets just die on me in mid-show, never to work again. I don't understand that. Um, so just things like that, like, and that goes back to buying the quality thing, spending the money to get the quality thing that's gonna actually be a workhorse for you and do what you want it to day after day for a long period of time instead of having to replace cheap things all the time.
Yeah. Like your cabinets would die. Like, would you take them in somewhere to get them worked on? And they were just like, oh, these are dead forever.
Yeah, I've tried to get. I had an orange 212 cabinet that died on me, and nobody that's looked at it can tell that there's a problem, and also it won't work. So
That's so
it
frustrating.
looks like it's right. The speakers aren't blown. It's just I haven't tried to rewire it yet. I guess I could do that.
But now you have that. What's the name of the brand?
Dark glass. Yeah,
Which is phenomenal.
Dark glass.
I've got a
Sounds
410
evil.
cabinet. Yeah, I guess they're sort of like marketed towards metal, or something like that. It seems like their bass amps, for example, have a distortion channel on them, like much like a guitar amp.
But their cab is awesome. It's the best sounding bass cab that I've ever seen anyone have.
I quite like it.
Nice.
I mean, unless
can
you're going to
handle-
like Mike Gordon level, stack tower of bass stuff, it's for one person being able to lift it in and out of a venue.
It's a 410 that weighs 48 pounds, so it's kind of like it's one of those things where you almost lift it too high each time you lift it up because you're just like, whoa, it kind of goes over you.
Is this thing empty?
Yeah.
Well, what about you, Michael? Problem solutions, obstacles hurdled.
So, on a conceptual side, having a like end goal and a like knowing how to build a roadmap and a plan of how to achieve that vision will save you a lot of wasted time, a lot of heartache, and a lot of wasted money. So if you apply it to gear, knowing like what your ideal, I am a full-time touring or a full-time studio or a full-time sound designer. I have everything that I want at my disposal. What is that? What do I actually need? It'll save you from being like distracted by the next new shiny thing that's, coming in the mail in the Sweetwater catalog.
You got to throw those away immediately.
That's what I do now. I literally okay, we're recycling you right now.
Oh, I actually enjoy flipping through it and going, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't
I was
want
gonna
that.
ask with the SE mics if that was a Sweetwater recommendation, because mine was. I've
Yeah,
got the
actually.
kick drum SE mic, and yeah.
Yeah, I
he's
bought
like,
I was talking to my Sweetwater representative who calls me sometimes.
Do you want to buy more stuff?
I'm like, I really like the guy, so like, and back when
Is it Patrick Lance?
no,
Okay.
his name is Michael Greeby. But back when I had a full-time restaurant job, he would call me and I would be like, all right guys, I gotta take this and like use it to like get out of a little bit of work. And but yeah, I was like, I really like the C414s. I can't afford to spend $2,500 on a match pair of condenser mics, and he was like, well, check out the SE40 400As. It's basically the same thing, a little bit warmer, from this company that they're Chinese and they make all of their stuff in-house at their company. They don't outsource their parts and manufacturing. And check these out, and they were less than half the price for a matched pair of multi-pattern, condensers. And ever since I got those, I've been a huge fan of that brand. I use those mics for everything: drum overheads, vocals.
Yeah, remind me to ask you about how I should position my drum overheads before you leave. We're not going to do that before the jam, but Sorry, what were
Yeah,
you
no.
saying about...
And the same thing. Sorry to tag on to what you're saying about the Sweetwater representative. It is definitely a good idea to build a relationship with your Sweetwater representative. They can
They can give you deals.
they can give you deals. They can recommend a better solution for you if you give them the time, because they want to talk to you. Uh, and they're really good at talking to you and telling you about gear.
that you should
But
buy?
if you describe that vision that you have, they will help you avoid some pitfalls and mistakes.
They can help you save money, literally.
Especially over the long term. If you're debating getting these 2 cents today or 1 cent in an interface that will then also accommodate that second synth later, you won't buy those 2 cents and go, oh, I can only use one of them at a time because I don't have the inputs. They can help you catch those moments. But that having an end goal and then working your way backwards from that to build a roadmap applies to literally everything else that you want to do in your musical career and all of your musical endeavors. If you say, I want to be the best solo player, okay, well, what does that look like? Build out a real clear image of what your view of being the best soloist on your instrument is, and then work your way back from that clear goal to where you are now, and then you have a good roadmap, and you don't get distracted by all these pretty shiny other things that may come up during your progress. And that's not to say to discount anything that comes up, because we should all be able to adapt and change what our vision is and change what that roadmap is. New gears created every year or twice a year at NAMM. They're all coming out with all this new stuff that may achieve that goal faster or better than what you had initially planned. But knowing what that plan is and then making intelligent, conscious decisions as you go through it.
I have a great example of just one more Sweetwater story. My dude, I had started a fund, saved up $5,000 to get this. I'm not gonna say the brand, or so we don't want to talk crap about people, but it was a 32 channel
Because you're eventually disappointed.
interface and converter separate box that was gonna upgrade my home studio, and it was $5,000 for both pieces. And I talked to Mike about it. I wanted to know what his opinion was, and he said, "Oh, definitely don't buy that. That's so buggy. Like, you don't want to have that at all." And he literally saved me $5,000. And he was like, "Oh, you have Focusrite stuff? Oh, just keep that until you can get something better. Just don't get this. Don't buy that." And I was like, "Wow, you're a salesman." And you just told me not to buy a $5,000 thing from your company. You truly are a great person.
Seriously,
It's huge.
I've had the same kind of experiences with my Sweetwater rep. I also found, like, when they look up your file, they probably have a bunch of people that they represent or that they deal with. I found that a good way to stand out to them is that they always remember what your order history is without immediately having to look it up, and that may be a good sly way to get better deals. Is to, if there's something that you're gonna order like a lot of, like an unreasonable amount of, or like something unusual, to bring that up when you call them. So I always start my call to my Sweetwater representative with, "Hey, this is Michael Crawford. I've ordered from you before. I'm the guy that ordered 28 harmonicas from you all at once that one time a couple years ago." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that was the biggest harmonica order anyone here has ever had, all in one order."
Nice. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last thing. I have just bought like one thing at a time from my Sweetwater rep in a row instead of saving up and buying like in bundles, but I know that's how you get the most savings. It's difficult to be that patient. So you gotta scratch that itch.
When we bought the Midas stage box and the M32C, I was figuring like, all right, we're dropping several $1,000s on this. probably gonna get a good deal. Also, I just bought, about $2,000 worth of harmonicas. Probably gonna get a good deal. Yeah, there are some things that
That's a
they
lot
just
of
don't have any ability to wiggle on the margin. But
Yeah, Bose is
they'll
one of
remember
those
that for later.
brands.
They'll remember that for later when you need to buy, 32 XLRs.
Yeah,
They'll
sometimes they'll
remember
throw in
that.
the cables for free, which is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has been a commercial for Sweetwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For tuning in.
They give you
Water.
candy.
Sponsor us together and separately.
That's right. Yeah. Anybody in Asheville can
Dr.
sponsor
Bacon.
me. That would be nice to get paid
Yeah.
for anything for this.
Or
All
just
right.
toss us some free shit.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Matthew Gornto, Mike Crawford. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
And we're
Thanks for
going to
having
take a small little break. Are there any last hanging threads for the talk? Because the chatting portion is almost over. It's coming. Any plugs?
I quite like your guitar amp here.
Plug my Fender Twin.
Yep.
Yeah, I bought it as sort of one of those purchases like, oh, I'll never need another guitar amp now. And now I don't have many uses for that, but maybe later I'll rock more.
Yeah.
The older you get, the more you can rock out, right?
Oh, yeah. Everybody
that
check
works.
out our new single, Behave, streaming on all platforms.
That is a fun song.
Came out maybe last Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The typical release day for me, or what used to be the typical release day for music, last Tuesday.
Yes,
Tuesdays. We're gonna be heading to Florida, not this weekend, not next weekend, but the weekend after, right?
Going on a little Florida run.
Yeah.
Great
so
place to go in the winter time.
any of you viewers
yeah.
are in Florida, check out drbaconband.com, or we're also on Facebook and Instagram.
Buy a cool
And-
hat.
Yeah.
The hat game on your guys' website is clutch. Is fire.
You should see the setup that we have at shows. We have a merch table with a much nicer and more fleshed out array of hats than we even have on our website. We also
Dog
have
collars, cutting boards, measuring tapes, flasks.
we have coffee thermoses. We have herbal smoking devices.
Sugar and flour containers,
Sugar and flour containers,
Solid.
cookie jars,
lunch boxes.
lunch boxes, fanny packs, shoulder bags, like laptop bags. What else have we had? Oh, oven mitts,
Coasters.
coasters. Yeah. Maybe not all of these all the time, but a rotating assortment of all things that you might need in your life that also have our logo on it. In case you want that.
We have a lot of kitchen products because we're a food band. And
Yeah. Dr. Bacon.
Yep.
Yeah.
We need to get a
Starving.
spatula set.
oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe a bacon press. Why haven't we done that?
Yeah, the little iron
Cast
thing.
iron bacon press.
All right, I'm gonna press pause real quick, and we will
Speaking
be right back with a jam. I'm looking forward to it. All
Good
right.
deal.
Heck yeah.
That's fun.
I was like halfway through, I was like, oh, I think I can match this. And then, oh, hell, let's see.
I know, yeah. That was a cool moment.
Another thing I love about this Kaiser synth is the polyphonic aftertouch.
That's nice. And that's the wavetable synth that you were talking about?
Yeah, yeah, I'll use some of that here on this next one.
Cool.
Yeah, most of what I've done so far has been like standard waveforms.
I can try to do one where I'm like really simple and consistent, so you can, work your way around the horn here. There's a lot of stuff behind you right now.
I know, I didn't get a chance to like familiarize myself with this. I'll do that in the middle of a jam.
I'll hand you the manual if you want.
Oh yeah, yeah. For next time, I'll read it. Familiarize myself. You want to do that jam section we build thing that we're doing in the one that we're writing now, the A to D to F?
I'm trying to figure it out on bass.
Locked in for only so long. Yeah. It's 10 o'clock right now, so you guys are free to leave, but I'm happy to keep rocking out for a while if you guys are down.
Say that as I crack the second beer. Yeah, I don't know how much the voice is being picked up.
I mean, your microphone.
Oh, well, it's turned off.
Oh.
It's kind of EQ'd for harmonica. But yeah, so something that we do as a practice regimen routine in Dr. Bacon is every rehearsal when we get together, we start off the practice by our rehearsal space is set up in like a circle where we're all facing in towards the middle, and whoever decides to go first starts with a little repetitive simple jam, and then they'll look to somebody else in the circle and say, all right, now you come in. But they still hold on to their original groove. That person develops their part for that groove and then locks into a nice little set pattern, and then they look to the next person to join in, and then they develop a groove. And then we sit on that for a little while, really feel it out, and then start to break away from it a little bit, not too much, not try to push the envelope too far, and we just sit on that for a bit, and then we stop. And then the next person in the rotation starts a groove, and they do the same process until everyone has started it. So if you want, we can demonstrate that.
Makes sense to me. Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, one for each of us. Typically, they're only like 2 to 3 minutes long, so they're nice and short. You're not trying to push the envelope too far in the jam. Just get an idea down and listen. Yeah. Take 3 or 4 of those things, mash them together. There you go. You got a hit song. Maybe not a hit.
You got a song.
Yeah. You got to write lyrics next.
sounded very familiar to me.
Unintentional quote.
It's kind of like our song "Baby Baby,"
Can you really quote yourself? And if you do, is that pretentious?
It's like something Michael Scott would do.
You can't quote yourself. Whoopi Goldberg, Michael Scott. So, I will do this now. they're not all winners. Usually the ones that I come up with are not winners.
It's not that. I like to think of it as like the rhythmic structure is so complex that I can't conceive of it. Like it's possible because it had a repetitive pattern. It could have been figured out. It's just like so hard sometimes.
Definitely.
Ben would have told me exactly where I was making that wrong.
I know Ben, when he was on, he was like, let's do something not in 4. And I was like, cool. And he started a beat, and it was insane. And I was like, what is that? And he was like, I don't know. And then, he took a minute, and he figured it out, and it was in like 13. And I was like, how am I going to jam with that? It was very complex. I was just trying to lay down something very ambiguous for yours and hoped that it would lock it.
Yeah, no, that was great. And that is, I guess, a trap that I realize that we're falling into with this this practice regimen of doing these jams like this, where you try to push yourself by pushing everyone else.
Yeah.
I was talking about it last night. Like, if we go almost through the whole round of 6 people, and there hasn't been like a really weird one yet, and somebody picks a really, and it's always like somebody that's like, well, we're gonna make this really weird now, and just see. Everybody, hang on, here we go.
Yeah, then it's time for the dabs to go around. If no one's done it yet.
I tend to appreciate the weirder ones.
Let's see, I guess it's my turn. How weird can I... Just 4 on the floor.
Basically, just look at whoever you want to.
Yeah, when you feel locked into your groove.
I've been wanting to do this one all night. Like, I keep hinting at it, but I can't get it in there. And it's like... That's fun.
It doesn't always produce good sounding music, but it makes you think and listen, which is a good thing if you're trying to play music. Those two things are like goals that you should be striving for, but it doesn't always work out. And that's okay. That's okay. Doesn't always have to work out.
It's okay. Can't listen.
Sometimes it will be like the craziest thing ever, and sometimes after you're done, you're like, song done.
All right, can we please move on now?
Song over.
Sometimes you're like, yeah, that was awesome.
Sometimes it's so good, you're like, can we try to replicate that again?
Yeah, good thing you're recording every practice. Do you guys go back often and try to like pick out
Oh, absolutely.
the thing?
That's
Yeah.
kind of like the whole, because like, for us to record the same songs over and over again, it's fine. You can see progress over a period of time, but it's really about those round robins. It's like having every one of those recorded so that you can go back and, you can remember that one a couple months ago? Let's find it. The one that everybody was stoked about at the end, and just, good inspiration and good songwriting material.
Yeah. Nice. Well, you guys want to do another one? Maybe not another whole round robin, but another jam, like
Yeah,
a
just a
finale?
regular jam.
Yeah.
Sure.
We've just been playing that same beat the whole night.
Oh, like that's in like 3.
We could do something in 3, yeah. Yeah, that first time where we came back to the 3 after being in that swing, don't know how we did that. That felt really nice. Yeah, so back into that, I tried to recreate it, didn't quite get there.
Yeah, the times have worked out really, really nice.
Yeah.
The moral of this this whole jam, though, Sweetwater, please sponsor us.
Yeah.